I'm so jealous.
And I say it just like that, with no ill intent, but I'm sure anyone around me would have heard what you did, Chris. Exactly. There will be a price.
I'm sure he is but a cheese vendor. He won't ask for much. He does not know what it is he holds.
I mean, with his weaponry, he's far more than just a cheese vendor.
He might have been in the past.
That's true. But again, I still think talking to him is the start.
He seemed cordial for most of the nights.
Cordial.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so should we rush to catch up then? Or wait for them to arrive at their destination?
I mean, I don't know if, since we're not carrying, we're not laden with cheese, that we just would naturally catch up at normal.
Yeah, so you've got a few options for how you guys could describe the movement of the pair of you behind Silas and Elling. You could either be tailing, maintaining the same distance. You could be catching up, but not evidently in a hurry because you're tall, long legs. They're carrying weight. It's there's a bit of a crowded nature to the street, so it's not guaranteed. But you would, you will make ground on them. Or the third option would be you could, rush to catch up with them, in which case you'd sort of, get to them within 30 seconds or so.
I think Shalon would want to do the second one.
Just naturally, yeah. Okay.
Just naturally, our speeds would start to catch up.
Okay, so just follow with the intent of closing distance. Okay.
At some point, I'm sure he's gonna look back and would see us, and then we reassess with what his reaction is.
I only look forward, like the shock.
This is true.
The worst spy ever.
Yeah, but again, unbeknownst to us, your boss is next to you and probably would now recognize us from your descriptions. So
better than me, anyway. He only had one eye, though. Bad perception.
That's true. Disadvantage.
He only looks back with his patched eye.
He's like Mad Eye Movie. He sees through the back of his head. Bad.
Very nice.
That would make for a good spy.
So we're just gradually catching up.
Okay, sure. So you do so. You follow them up the main street, and by the time you reach the central plaza of the trade district of the city, on which looks the auction house. There's a well-known armorer. There's a big sort of billboard with notices pinned up for the observation of all citizens, sort of royal decrees and so on. I mean, certainly there'll be one up there right now announcing the sad news of the death of King Varian Rin. There's guards about. In fact, there's a few sort of larger groups of sort of 5 or 6 guards patrolling this area just because it's a sort of major thoroughfare of the city. And yeah, they're just slightly ahead of you, and they continue across the plaza with you slowly gaining ground behind them. And by the time they reach the other side, you are close enough that you're able to easily follow them into a it's a narrower street. It's not really an alleyway. It's not sort of like a back alley deal that they're sneaking up, but a less crowded and narrower street leading out of the center of the trade district and north towards the canals.
Do I sense anything odd about their movements, like they have noticed? Or...
Well, let us determine this. Silas, may I have another perception check from you?
Sure.
He's all up in that.
I'm pretty tired,
Jesus.
Okay, yeah. So, no, their movements seem... Well, I guess you can also roll me a perception check to see how perceiving you are. No, actually, make it insight instead, because that's, I feel, the nature of what you're trying to ascertain here.
Okay.
I continue to crit random shit.
I'd like some of that.
Yes, Shalon, something about the pair of them does feel, maybe you're already aware that Silas himself is somewhat more than meets the eye, but it's neither of them seem to have noticed you, but the middle-aged man that Silas is walking with is almost sort of seems almost uncannily disinterested in what's going on around him. Like, it's not that he hasn't turned around and spotted you, it's that he's very eyes front. He's hardly even sort of looking around at all.
He's too casual.
Yeah, I'd say. There's a slight air of, like, he's too disinterested in what's going on around him. Like, that more so than just the average person walking down the street would be.
Right, so is it kind of like, I'm trying to think how to word this. The idea of, right, if you go into a rowdy bar, and, like, you see the guy who's, like, he's loud and obnoxious, you're like, oh yeah, it's all bravado, versus you see the guy in the corner who's super dead silent and his movements are, like, very quick, you're like, that's the dangerous one. Not the guy who's big and loud and everything, but it's that guy. Is it kind of that scenario where it's like, there's more to this guy, he's more dangerous than he gives on? Type, like, and he's comfortable in his own abilities?
Yeah, certainly there's an air of kind of casual poise to his movements. You know, like, watching him he's not someone you can imagine sort of, you know, tripping on a cobblestone or, you know, accidentally dropping his pack or something. He seems very in control. So I suppose in that sense, but mostly it's almost that you're not even like him spotting you doesn't even seem to be a possibility. He's almost supernaturally focused away from you.
Right. So he's dead set on getting to a specific, like, heading a certain direction, getting to a certain place. Like, that's a mission or something of his. Like, he's very dedicated or focused on
that. Sure. He does seem laser focused.
Okay. I don't say anything about it, but I keep that in mind.
Okay. So yeah, you enter this alleyway as they're about halfway up now, only sort of, I'd say, 40 or 50 meters ahead of you. And you, by now, are easily close enough to follow their movements. You see them at the far end turn right into a long tunnel built between, or into the fortifications between a couple of the buildings of the city that... I'm trying to remember backstories. Have either of you two Night Elves ever been to Stormwind before? Like, you're both pretty... No. I mean, you're obviously old being Night Elves, right?
Well, I would have briefly been in Stormwind.
But, like, not well enough to know your way around?
No.
Or... Okay.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't know my way around. If I came through Stormwind, it was, like, the briefest of things.
Sure.
So.
Okay. So, they turn into this long tunnel, and you follow them. Just in time to see them at the far end of the tunnel turning left. So again, you have a sense of the direction they've traveled in. And looking through the tunnel, because both of you are not familiar with the city, but are at least aware of its general layout. Stormwind is built on a network of canals, each of which separates the various districts of the city. There's the trade district, which you've just entered, and directly north across from the trade district is Cathedral Square. To the right of the trade district across a bridge would be an area designated as Old Town, in front of the palace, the Stormwind Keep. And in the opposite direction, to your left, leaving the trade district, would be the Mage Quarter, which eventually, if you travel around the canals there, leads on down to Stormwind Harbour, past the Cathedral Square, down to the docks. And then also in front of Stormwind Keep, sort of diagonally opposite the trade district, is the Dwarven district of the city. So that is trade district, right is Old Town, left is the Mage Quarter, directly across is Cathedral Square, and then right of Cathedral Square is the Dwarven district. And up on a hill further beyond both Old Town and the Dwarven district, and visible from most parts of the city because of its height and imposing presence, is Stormwind Keep. So you guys have come north out of the trade district and are, you can see in the distance, or not in the distance, but at the end of the tunnel, the wide open cobblestone paths lining the canals that mark the canal district of the city. And you can even see a boat going past. So anyway, you've seen them get to the end of this tunnel to the waterfront and turned left out the end. But obviously it's a tunnel, so you have no vision of where they've gone. But they're only sort of 30 or so meters ahead of you at this point. That's the length of the tunnel.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect anything, so...
Neither would I. So, judging by the turns they're making, do they seem to be heading towards Old Town or towards Cathedral District?
They've headed out the north side of the trade district, so they're either heading towards, but from the turns they've made, they're either heading towards Cathedral Square or towards the harbor. They would have, if they were heading to the Mage Quarter, they would have taken a different turn in the trade district or Old Town. They wouldn't have cut straight across the square. They're clearly heading somewhere in the north side of the city, but you're not sure where the bridges are, where the bridges are built over the canal, so you're not sure which direction they'd have to turn to necessarily take the shortest route to where. But they're not heading to anywhere in the south side of the city.
Gotcha.
From the way they crossed the trade district and the tunnel they took.
Would be deliveries of cheese be like ordinary to either of those two locations, the Cathedral Square or the harbor?
I mean, depending on the size, I'd say the harbor is pretty.
Yeah, the harbor makes the most sense. But
absolutely.
Okay.
And like, I mean, even I don't know if there's particular religious ceremonies that involve cheese. You could probably roll religion for that. But the cathedral square itself houses, apart from the very large Stormwood Cathedral, several like buildings of various functions. There's definitely like a few shops there. There's a large and well-respected orphanage. There's City Hall. There's you know, there's like, I mean, there's a large fountain. There's a lot of residential areas there. It's quite a nice, well-respected. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of reasons someone could be taking cheese to either there or to the harbor.
The fancy cheese and wine area. It's
sure,
okay.
Sure.
Gotcha. Cool. So yeah, then I think nothing of it and just continue to follow.
Okay. So both of you reach the end of the you reach the end of this tunnel and step out into the wide, airy canal district. There's a bridge some ways, slightly like a little ways down the canal on your left. There's a tailoring store and a few guards and just people generally walking around. It's a fairly, nice and open area. Give me perception checks. Looking around, neither of you immediately, especially looking left in the direction that you've just seen them turn, neither of you spot any sign of the quarry that you've been following, although surely there hasn't been enough time for them to have gone so very far until Elling and Silas, Elling and Silas step out not 5 meters away from behind a large lion statue flanking the entrance to the canal district, both immediately facing and looking straight at you. Silas, you were some 10 or so seconds before gently but firmly pulled behind the lion statue, wordlessly.
Obviously, I knew what was happening.
Obviously, yeah, you were totally, you hardly had...
When I really GR'd, the perception rolls,
Yeah, those the real rolls, sure.
Yeah.
Sure thing. Okay. And you are confronted by, by now familiar sight of Silas in his human form, and a man whom neither of you have ever met before. He's middle-aged. He's well-muscled and poised, but otherwise dressed casually in breeches, sturdy boots, a light cotton waistcoat. He has long dark hair pulled back sort of behind his ears, a short goatee, and what we could basically call a handlebar moustache. Nice. And he wears an eye patch over his right eye. So dangerous business. And both of them are carrying heavy packs, and the faint smell of cheese, now they've stepped out, is now becoming rather pungent. And the man said, "Oh, go on."
No, I just, as they confront us, I just do a slight bow and say, "Greetings."
Yeah. Good to see you again, Silas. And you, sir. I bow slightly at them.
Says, my fair night elf maidens, to what do we owe the pleasure of your unexpected company?
I look at Shalon and say, well, we have had dealings with your employee, I assume, and he has something that interests us. We were wondering, Silas, if we could perhaps have it back.
Kind of frown.
Elling says nothing. He turns towards you, Silas, as though expecting you to respond. Although, actually, Shalon and Talia, thank you. Give me insight checks. Let's read the situation. Insight, please.
Damn it.
So let me just double check my insight.
Okay. No, neither of you pick up anything particularly untoward at this point.
Yeah.
Elling just calmly turns towards Silas and sees what he has to say.
Yeah. May I ask what you would do with it if you had possession of it?
Said, well, truth be told, with its origin, as I explained it, it's both not of this world and could mean quite a deal towards what the warlock's actions were. I wish to study it.
Is that so? Says Elling. Please, enlighten me. What do you know of this interesting flower that Silas has brought to show me?
Yeah, so I'm not afraid to share. So I share basically the same information that I did before, about like the book that I had read, with a brief description of the flower, but it's a twisted version of it, right? Like it seems to have some type of. Would I recognize it as like a fell twisting of the flower?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
but I mean, I think you nat 20'd the check, which is the only reason you got anything off it. But yeah, because you recognized it as bearing a passing resemblance to that flower, and also being unlike any other flower you'd ever encountered, which is all that led you to draw the connection. But yes, it is fell and twisted and kind of more thorny and edged and edgy in general.
Okay. Yeah, so I basically just I lay it all out of what it is. So I don't know what this could portend, but obviously it's worth investigating.
You must be remarkably well read to have drawn all that from a single bloom.
I kind of, I have a memory sometimes that it seems to pick up little things. I put this up to luck.
Even with the mediocre insight checks, at this point, both of you become aware of a almost mechanical calculation in the way that this middle-aged man is assessing the situation. You can see just sort of behind his eyes the wheels turning, various outcomes being weighed, various judgments being made, and in general he seems to be thinking through, weighing up his options very carefully.
He's Sherlock Holmesing us.
He's Sherlock Holmesing you.
I say, look, if you wish to sell it, we can perhaps buy it from you.
Oh? And what would you consider such a interesting specimen to be worth?
Said, well, what is it worth to you? I'll be honest, Silas, I don't understand why you ran off with it in the first place.
If I offended you back then, I'm sorry. No. I had a bad night.
As I apologize, I said multiple times I really did need to be going, and it simply seemed like we weren't going to find a quick solution to who got to take the flower.
Yeah, especially with like what we're kind of like seeing the calculation in his companion's eyes right now. I say yes, because what would a simple cheesemonger wish with such a flower?
Indeed. Silas, you really must be quicker on your mental feet in these situations. My fair ladies, let us drop all pretense. Whether because of my apprentice's most recent half-assed ramblings, or because of the events of the time you spent in his company, you are by now certainly aware that Silas here is no mere cheesemonger.
Nor is he a mere human.
Nor indeed is he a mere human. And while that would normally be of limited concern to me, your having come across him in my own company, regardless of what conclusions you may have drawn, does put me in a rather awkward situation, because my own cover is something I take rather more seriously. He pauses for a second as if to gauge reactions.
Yes, your cover of a pirate cheese vendor is perfect.
He grins wryly at that. It's not. He isn't sort of. He doesn't break out in mirth. There is a certain mirthlessness to the expression,
Right.
but he acknowledges the humor of it, and says, "Quite. Well, then, allow me to be more blunt. Silas here is an operative for a certain intelligence service that operates here within Stormwind. I am, to be somewhat mysterious about it, you could consider me his handler. He, dutifully, having encountered what he viewed to be a potential threat to the security of both the Kingdom of Stormwind and the Alliance, brought it to me that I may best judge what to do with it. The two of us were, in fact, now on our way to the Cathedral District to be told what I was most surprised to learn. You, my fair lady, he says, nodding towards you, Shallan, were able to describe to me in detail. So I thank you for that, but you must understand that I am now left in a somewhat awkward situation. While I do feel indebted to you and grateful on behalf of the Kingdom of Stormwind and the Alliance, I cannot casually now let you out of my sight. I hope that is something you can understand.
If I may.
You may.
Look, it sounds like you are protecting the Alliance, as it were, and I believe that was what you were afraid of, Shallan, was it not? The potential dangers of the consequences of a flower like this existing. Well, it seems to be in safe hands, so your worries should be alleviated somewhat. And you said you felt indebted. Perhaps we can arrange a pay of some sort?
All things are certainly possible. I do feel indebted to you, and I would see your unrequited loyalty rewarded. You certainly have been very helpful, both in terms of defending Northshire Abbey and in terms of gathering useful or presenting me with useful intelligence about this specimen. At this point, he pulls out the flower and kind of like holds it up as if to make it the centerpiece of the focus of the conversation. And says, however, the point does still stand that my own identity has become rather compromised in light of your presence here, and you're viewing me in the presence of Silas here, who's... What is your response to this conversation, or Silas, as it's going on now that you seem to have been edged out of this?
Are you?
I'm alright. Yeah, I know that's like not my strong point. I know that like isn't what
Sure.
what I was good at. So I'm the kind of like thinking a bit like
Wait, are you doing the "what did you expect, man" face right now?
kind of like it's like what excuse do I like? What was I meant to do, man?
Okay.
Yeah, but I turn and say,
It's a valid question.
in light of recent events, should we not be allies? Are we not on the same side?
Precisely so. It is simply my concern that, well, to put it bluntly, I cannot merely allow you to walk off down the street with the extent of what you know, specifically about myself now. May I, laying aside the issue of recompense for your service for just a moment, invite the pair of you ladies to accompany Silas and I to the Cathedral District so that the scholars there may... He searches for the word for a second and says, ascertain the exact correctness of what it is that this young priestess has... Well, I wouldn't say young, because you're a night elf. This fair priestess has told me.
I'm clearly
I would-
displeased, but I'll look at you as well.
Yeah, but I say I would welcome their insight.
Thank you. Then let us be on our way. And he turns and takes half a step and then turns back and says, and holds out a hand and says, Elling Trias, at your service.
Elling Trias?
Elling Trias. I'll put it in Discord.
Perfect. Then I'll extend my hand and say, Shalon Stormlight, it's a pleasure to meet you.
He takes your hand in his rather larger one and gently bows and kisses you on what would be a ring if you were wearing a ring. I'm not sure if you are.
I'm not.
Okay, well, then he kisses your hand.
Yeah. But I get the
roguishly
gesture.
and politely.
Of course. Okay.
And then he turns and extends his hand towards you, Talia.
Yeah, after like a second, I extend my hand
Okay.
as well and say, "You may call me Talia," but I keep the handshakes like vertical, so he doesn't get the
Okay, yeah,
chance to.
sure.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. No.
No, like the
Okay,
Donald Trump.
Yeah, he
No, you're gonna grab the elbow.
He accepts the limitation on the interaction that you have placed and says, "The pleasure to make both of your acquaintance. Let us be on our way now." And indeed leads slightly further down the street towards the bridge that crosses over, and on the far side of the canal you can see the rather nicer, slightly yellowed buildings of the Cathedral Square.